So quietly means no conversations on the way. I call on Government Order of the Day.
Adjourn debate on the Prime Minister's statement and the amendment proposed to it.
I call the Honourable James Meagher.
Mr Speaker, isn't it great to be back at work here in Parliament to continue work on our ambitious agenda to get New Zealand back on track? As the Prime Minister would say, New Zealand is the best little country in the world, but we need to get our mojo back. And how do we do that? By fixing the basics and building the future. But before we do that, a little reflection. How good was Waitangi last week? How good was Tama Pōtaka? Forthright, mana enhancing. Tama led a strong National Party delegation over several days, and we thank him for his guidance and his manaaki. How good was the Prime Minister? Taking up the wedo, responding with calm and grace, highlighting the bonds that bring us together in times of crises, rather than focusing on what drives us apart, and turning towards debate on the issues of the day rather than leading them for another. Mr Speaker, how good was Grant McCallum, the local MP? Oh, the man practically lives at Waitangi, and the lengths he goes to in order to engage with local iwi and his community are textbook for any local MP. And actually, many would have missed this, but as we were lining up for the pōwhiri to take our seats as ministers and party leaders and party doyons gradually squeezed out those of us who were keen enough to sit out the front, Grant got shuffled to the second row. But immediately, from across the Aotea, there were very strong and very severe calls from several kuia telling Grant under no circumstance not to sit in the second row. And so up the front Grant went, and that speaks volumes of a man who was well respected in his community. And Mr Speaker, how good was the new season of Keeping Up with the Kapakingis? I've never been to a live filming before, but you could just feel the energy and the drama. For those of you who missed it, Cousin Peony's leaving the show, Uncle Willie went a bit off script, and a surprise haka left you, Mr Speaker, wondering if you were watching a repeat of last season. But through the drama and the rumblings emerged some sound advice from the final speaker, Waihorai Shortland. Waihorai said, and I quote him, "If we don't want to talk to the Crown, who can we talk to? The trees won't give it back to us. The birds sing a lovely song, but they're not on the same page. And for all of our differences, you are still my only haven to get resolution, whoever you may be." He also went on to say he wished we as MPs were colourblind, and that if he had one wish, we would remove our party affiliations in order to chart a path for the future together. Now, we know here it's unlikely that he'll get his wish about colour blindness, and party affiliations won't fall to the wayside. But surely he can get his wish about working together in order to chart a path to the future. If National, Labour, Green and ACT MPs can come together on the cricket field and raise $50,000, as we did for Resport last week in Whangarei and the days before Waitangi, why can't we look to the Prime Minister's statement and together identify those things we are worth pursuing across multiple parliaments? And if the netballers can come together without subs on the bench and play 4 full quarters of high-octane netball, why can't we work together as well? New Zealanders, Mr Speaker, are crying out for a sense of unity and coherence from their politicians. Yes, we are going to disagree sometimes on the deep, fundamental questions of philosophy and policy that bring each of us here, but surely there are substantial features of the Prime Minister's statement we can all agree are worthy of pursuit together. Let's look at RMA reform, the largest reforms to our planning system in local government since the RMA was introduced 30 years ago. Settled consensus on an enduring, long-lasting framework which enables growth and protects the environment is vital. New Zealanders need certainty that they can build houses, roads, infrastructure and flood resiliency that they need over the next 50 to 100 years. We can't have a healthy environment without a strong economy, and we won't have a strong economy without a stable environment. Mr Speaker, let's look at Fast Track. Now, I know the members opposite voted against Fast Track, but think about 2 things. First, recent events have shown that Fast Track does not mean rubber stamp. Projects are carefully considered by expert panels and they must stack up against environmental concerns. Secondly, nobody seriously believes that the opposition opposes many, if any, of those projects listed in the Fast Track. And we know they moved amendments to remove them from that Fast Track process, and we'll remind them of that as we lead up to the election. But do we seriously consider for a moment that Rachel Boyack opposes the Hope Bypass in Nelson? Or that she opposes the iwi-led Maitahi Village housing project in Nelson? No, of course not. Do we really believe that they'll get in the way of solar projects in Oamaru, in Tekapo or Twizel? Projects that are going to reduce the reliance on hydro and produce power in the South Island at the time of the year where demand is the greatest. Are the opposition transport spokespeople going to come out against the second Ashburton Bridge? Is the tourism spokesperson going to oppose workers' accommodation at Cardrona? Will Joe Luxton oppose water storage and fish screens in North Canterbury? I highly doubt it. These are serious, positive, growth-enabling legacy projects that are good for New Zealand and good for New Zealanders. These are the projects we should be talking about when Waihora asks us to put our colours aside and chart a path together. The Prime Minister talks of $7 billion worth of taxpayer-funded infrastructure projects, including the Dunedin Hospital rebuild, Brougham Street and Ralston flyovers in Canterbury, the rebuild of the Burnham Regional Supply Facility. Just this weekend, Miles Anderson and I announced the rebuild of 2 more bridges in South Canterbury on State Highway 82 at Waiho North River and Elephant Hill Stream. And last week I stood alongside Minister Patterson, alongside the Deputy Mayor of Timaru, local contractors and local developers outside the Timaru Showgrounds in demonstration of the problems we can solve when we work together and we get things built. That showgrounds development has sat idle for years, while a succession of people were busy pointing fingers at each other and nobody really taking responsibility for doing what's right for the community. Make the decisions, make the investments and get on with it. We think New Zealanders are tired of the millions of reasons we say no. They want to hear us say yes, preferably together, preferably for the long term. Say yes to Chris Bishop's 30-year infrastructure pipeline. Say yes to Erica Stanford's revolution in education, her raising of standards, the elevation of vocational education as an equal to the university pathways we try to ham-fistedly force everyone into. Say yes to targets in health and in education and in law and order, knowing that when we don't set targets and we don't hold ourselves accountable, standards slip, wait times blow out, attendance drops and crime goes up. Say yes to delivering more services in the community at a local level and requiring actual outcomes for the millions of dollars of contracted service delivery. Say yes to social investment. And for goodness sake, say yes to local government reform. Don't sit there and die on the hill of legacy regional councils. Work with us on a shared idea of what individual decision-making, community-led services and local government looks like over the next 50 years. Say yes to more tourism and more visitors to our brilliant country. People who bring with them not only their own cultural vibrancy, but also their own foreign currency. And say yes to more foreign investment in our startups and our infrastructure through InvestNZ. Mr. Speaker, let me close with one short example. I spent a lot of time in Queenstown over the last year as Minister for the South Island. And every single person that I've spoken to knows that Queenstown will be a large metropolitan city in the next 100 years. It is a desirable, beautiful, high-energy region full of great, talented people. Growth in that region is inevitable. The question is not how do we put the genie back in the bottle. People will come. Attractive regions attract ambitious people. It is going to happen. The question for us all is what do we want this growth to look like in 100 years' time? Where do we want to put our schools? What will our health needs be? How do we best stay ahead of our infrastructure demands? How do we give critical infrastructure, like our airports, our bridges, our roads, our power supply, our schooling infrastructure, our hospitals, the certainty of consent and maintenance over the next 100 years? How do we maintain flexibility in our planning so that we can adapt to the inevitable change in attitudes, in technology, in preferences, and quite frankly, where we want to live? The only real answer is that we don't really know for sure. But we do know that the only way to do this is to tackle it together by charting that shared path. Yes, of course, we'll disagree around the edges, and even the closest of relatives in this House will be in fierce disagreement. But I plead to the members opposite, find those things you do support. Please commit to them. Find something in our agenda that you will commit to long term. Give New Zealanders the certainty that they want, that successive governments and successive parliaments will build a country for the future. It is very sweet. It is a very sweet ideal that I implore everybody to listen to. Mr. Speaker, we can all agree that New Zealand is a great little country to live in. Maybe apart from those heckling opposite who apparently don't want to join the shared path and who want to sit there and throw barbs and throw jibes across the House. But Mr. Speaker, there is only one way we can guarantee prosperity in New Zealand. And for us on this side, it's to fix the basics now so that we can build for a future tomorrow. Thank you, Sister.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister's statement in an election year sets the vibe of the year. It tells the House where the energy's at. It's a way to think about how the year's going to show up. And Mr Speaker, nothing said it more than Christopher Luxon, day one of the Parliament sitting. He's given 20 minutes in an election year to spell out the achievements of his government, to chart out the path ahead, to inspire the caucus, to inspire the nation. And he falls 6 minutes short. Can't make it to the end of his speech. Doesn't have 20 minutes of vision or ideas in him in an election year. Now, Mr Speaker, I probably started this year thinking there were going to be some fractures in the National Party. We'd certainly been hearing about them at the end of the year, but nothing has shown more unity and loyalty to their leader than the absolute commitment of every member of the National Party who stood up not to outshine their leader. Their leader who fell 6 minutes short, that couldn't spell out vision, couldn't spell out achievement, and these days is sounding far less like a Prime Minister or a leader. The only fallback is to blame the other guys, to blame the people before them. And at this point, Mr Speaker, he's sounding more like that frequent caller to the complaints department than a Prime Minister. It is time for our Prime Minister to stand up, to show some leadership and to explain to everyday New Zealanders why life is getting harder under his Prime Ministership. Why he is leading in a country where he promised to fix the economy. But everywhere we go, people we are speaking to are telling us life is getting harder, life is not getting easier. They are making it worse for people all over the place. Christopher Luxon on the campaign trail nearly 3 years ago was up and down the country, as were his MPs and candidates, promising everybody that brighter future, telling everyone that they were going to fix everything, telling families they were going to get $250 a fortnight in tax cuts. Now, Mr Speaker, we on this side of the House, we don't back ourselves as particularly skilled in the art of sleuthing, but we are going to turn our attention to finding just one family that have received that $250 a fortnight in tax cuts, because the IRD hasn't found one, the Prime Minister can't identify one, Nicola Willis can't identify just one family. So when the National Party go back on the doors this election, they're going to have to explain to the electorate why it is that life is harder under their government. Why is it harder when you go to the supermarket? They're told by Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis, don't worry, the recovery is happening. For people, when they're standing at the supermarket checkout thinking about how they're going to pay for that trolley of groceries, it feels more like a recession than it does a recovery. They're wondering how they're going to pay for this, how they're going to pay the power bill, how they're going to pay the doctor's bill, how they're going to pay the rent or the mortgage. And this government crickets in terms of what they have to offer families who are in this situation. Mr Speaker, when we talk about how it is that we will offer hope and vision, and Chris Hipkins, I won't call him Christopher, but Chris Hipkins spelt this out very clearly in his speech in response to the Prime Minister's statements. He talked about, when we talk about how we're going to ease that cost burden on families, we're going to give them something tangible, a Medicard. So going to the doctor is not a luxury. So they will be able to go to the GP. They will be able to be seen to, and they won't have to juggle that against paying the power bill, buying groceries, paying for the school uniform, or any other costs that the family have to go endure. That is not the country that we want on this side of the House. We want a country that invests in its people. A government that puts the health of its citizens and is willing to back them, not property speculators and not tobacco companies at the fore of the equation. So, Mr. Speaker, there are going to be very clear choices for voters in this year's election about who it is that they can vote for, who has got their back, who is going to be thinking about their jobs, their health, their homes, about how we can relieve the pressure on the costs of living. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we look at what this government is presiding over, it can be bleak. And thank goodness we had Chris Hipkins' speech to inject some hope and some vision into what that picture looks like, because tens of thousands of people have lost their jobs. Nicola Willis has told them not to take it personally. Now, it's pretty hard if you lose your job and you don't know how you're going to support your family, how you're going to pay for the mortgage or the rent or put food on the table, not to take it personally. But is there a plan? There is no plan. What we see is New Zealanders voting with their feet every day and leaving New Zealand. That is not the kind of country that we want to see. We want to see a country where there is hope for our young people. They want to stay here because they see a fulfilling future, one where they can fulfil their aspirations, where they can be everything they want to be. And that is not what is happening under this government. Now, Mr. Speaker, I couldn't forego this opportunity to have a talk about the LNG gas tax that the government announced yesterday. Now, Mr. Speaker, if you were writing for a satirical show, you could not make this stuff up better. So yesterday, in official briefings, and the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy stood on the podium, and it was a levy. No, by today it's not a levy, it's a fee. Right. Come to question time, it's not a levy, it's not a fee, it's a charge. And I think we saw the Minister of Energy introduce a new description for it. I think it was an insurance policy may have come into the equations in his answers in question times today. But, Mr. Speaker, to quote Nicola Willis, and we've been doing it all day, and it's not something that we're particularly, that we'd put high on what we usually do, but if it quacks like a duck, what's the other bit of it? It walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a tax. Well, anyway, I completely botched that one. But, Mr. Speaker, make no bones about it. This is a gas tax. This government is proposing that New Zealand households and businesses that do not use gas, that use electricity, are going to be paid a tax to pay for gas infrastructure. Now, here's the kicker. People using gas are not going to have to pay that levy. This is a huge subsidy on one of the most expensive ways in which we can produce energy in this country. Mr. Speaker, this is not about New Zealand seizing the moment and thinking how, in an era of global uncertainty, can we put energy security and New Zealand's security front and centre by relying on electrons homegrown, made in New Zealand by sun and wind here in New Zealand and by our hydro lakes? No. What we're going to do, we're going to tether ourselves to precarious offshore gas markets that have been highly volatile over the last 5 years and subject New Zealand industry and New Zealand households to that price volatility. So do not be fooled. When this government says this will lead to lower electricity costs, when this will save jobs, they need to show us the modelling. Because all over the country they are being called out on this. This does not stack up, and it is no surprise that that modelling has not been released, that it has not been put on the table. Because, Mr. Speaker, they are all talk. This is a government that has failed to produce an energy strategy and energy policy, and it has gone for a Band-Aid. And it is a Band-Aid that New Zealand household and businesses are going to end up paying for. And it is an expensive Band-Aid. And it is an expensive Band-Aid that we don't have to have. There are other opportunities. Now, Mr. Speaker, do we need to have firming and storage in our energy system? Yes, we do. Does it have to be LNG? No, it doesn't. There are cheaper options, and this government took them off the agenda, therefore subjecting New Zealand households and businesses to their gas tax. You will hear them denying it's called that over the coming day. But, Mr Speaker, I go back to the vibe of the thing, the year that we are entering into. And when we look at the lacklustre faces of the government benches, we can see this is a government that is out of ideas, it is out of hope, and it is certainly a party in the National Party that lacks a leader that is failing to inspire his own caucus, a leader that is failing New Zealanders.
Call on Tim van der Molen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, look, that member's attempt to put that joke across earlier, I think, just sums up the last Labor government. Great promise, lots of noise, but totally failed to deliver, and everyone was left wondering just what the heck had happened. Now, Mr Speaker, all we've heard from the other side today is bluster, blame and general babble, and frankly, New Zealanders deserve better than that. Thank goodness for them, on this side there is a government that is fixing the basics and building the future. And Mr Speaker, I get the opportunity to see the promise of that in the Waikato electorate every day. It is, of course, the best electorate in the country, Mr Speaker, and we are very proud to be benefiting from some of the magnificent changes this government has brought to the fore. Now, most recently, of course, the third medical school turned sod just before Christmas, Mr Speaker. A fantastic moment for our region, and it will be fantastic, of course, for New Zealand more broadly as well. Sticking with that health theme now, we've had the 12-month prescriptions come in, and just this last week, as I've been going around the communities in the electorate, I've had numerous people stop me and thank me for that change, because it's a meaningful impact for them, Mr Speaker. If they are able to get a 12-month prescription instead of having to go 4 times a year to the doctor, it reduces their cost. It frees up additional doctor's appointments as well. Now, these are all steps, Mr Speaker, that will help us to build the future that New Zealanders deserve. Now, alongside that, of course, we have transportation. Now, in our electorate, that is a huge opportunity. We have the mighty Waikato Expressway. Now, we'll be doing the next extension of that. We'll be turning dirt on that later this year, Mr Speaker, the extension to the Piarere intersection of State Highway 1 and 29, a dangerous corridor with high traffic volumes that actually, Mr Speaker, we would have just about been right now driving on a brand new 4-lane expressway had it not been cancelled by the last Labor government in 2018. Short-sighted, narrow-minded approach, Mr Speaker, that compromised the safety of Waikato residents and road users and was simply unacceptable. Thank goodness that is back on the table now, Mr Speaker, and as I say, we'll be turning dirt this year. Alongside that, the Southern Links project and the commitment this government has made to extending the expressway, our National Party plan, all the way through to Tauranga, 4 lanes, a fantastic ambition, Mr Speaker, and one that I think will be a massive boon, not just for our economy in the Waikato, but for the wider Golden Triangle, which, as we know, is expected to see 70% of New Zealand's population growth out to 2050, Mr Speaker. 70%. We must get the infrastructure in place to support that growth. And that's what this government is striving so hard to do. Now, we've had to play a bit of catch-up, Mr Speaker. Fixing those basics hasn't been easy, and we've seen that in infrastructure, but we've also seen it in education. And with all the kids now back at school, my own included, Mr Speaker, we've had great feedback from other school parents who are just delighted at the progress that's been made now in education. They actually have hope again that education will deliver great outcomes for young New Zealanders into the future. It should not be that we accept the mediocrity that seemed to be the case under the last government. This government is more ambitious than that, Mr Speaker. We are fixing the education curriculum. We will ensure that those young New Zealanders going through school will be able to build a better future for themselves and, of course, for New Zealand, Mr Speaker. Now, law and order as well is another key area that, like most of New Zealand, the Waikato saw some issues over the last number of years. Thankfully, we're seeing a massive turnaround in that space as well. Ram rates down significantly in our electorate as they are around the country, 85% drop, 38,000 fewer victims of serious, violent and sexual crime, Mr Speaker. that impacts families across the country. I don't think we can appreciate just how much that means to communities, not seeing those victims. That is massive. The other side, Mr. Speaker, would have us abolish prisons and defund the police. That absolutely is not something that this side of the House will be doing. We are committed to ensuring that there will be consequences for crime, but indeed focusing on how we can reduce the level of offending in the first place, Mr. Speaker. Now, we've seen a 24% increase in police foot patrols around our electorate as well. People are noticing these changes, Mr. Speaker, the improvements, the basics being fixed, the promise that the future holds. Optimism is coming through, and I am confident that 2026 will be a great year, and re-electing a National League government at the end of the year will ensure we can continue to build the future that New Zealand deserves. Thank you.
Well done.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's statement to Parliament for 2026 was delivered on the 27th of January, and I still encourage New Zealanders to have a read or listen to some of the speeches that was delivered in this House since then. Now, Mr. Speaker, since the Prime Minister's statement, I've shared and talked to many New Zealanders in every walk of life. People in our cities, in our rural areas, in our regions, people who work in different sectors, and the many ethnic and migrant communities who help make New Zealand better, stronger, more connected internationally, and definitely more ambitious. And the message that I have when I talk to them is very, very simple: fixing the basics and building the future. And recently, just very recently, as of this Monday, yesterday, I had the best example to talk to people. Yesterday morning, I had the privilege and honour, I was invited by the local MP of Takanini, Rima Nakle, to join her and the Minister of Education, Minister Stanford, for the blessing at 5 a.m. and the pōwhiri at a primary school in Flatbush. The primary school was named and gifted a beautiful name, Te Kura Rau Iti Primary School. Now, Flatbush, part of Takanini, is one of the fastest growing electorates and suburb in New Zealand. We see a lot of new builds, a lot of new families, a lot of young family with very young children, a lot of diversity in the ethnicities, and therefore we saw the growth and actually explosion into the number of students that are enrolled locally in schools. And through our campaign period actually in 2023, and all the way back to 2020 under the last government, Rima Nakle and myself saw that teachers had to give up their staff room and to give up their library space just so that they can provide classrooms for the overflow of students so they can go to class. And it got to a point where one of the teachers asked us and said, well, we're so close to giving up our staff room, our kitchen, as well as maybe even the toilet, because we're just so short in space. And then they told us the Labour government promised us this and new classroom and new this and new that, but we just haven't quite seen it yet. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is why I say fixing the basics and building the future is so evident by the opening of the new primary school on Monday. Fixing the basics. Schools and classrooms don't have to be rocket science. They don't have to be designed differently for every school. It needs 4 walls and a roof, warm and dry, so students can focus on learning, building their future. And this is what Minister Stanford had done since she became the Minister for Education in New Zealand. She had asked, and the entire ministry worked together to make sure that classrooms should be just built easy, fast, safe, and cost-effective. And guess what, Mr. Speaker? Classrooms now in New Zealand are built less than half the cost of what they were under the Labour government. And what that means is Minister Stanford is now able to fix the basics by providing more classrooms and more new schools for our children so they can go to class and actually learn and build their future. But they also, the ministry can now provide more classrooms because they're able to do it faster and cheaper. This is what I called fixing the basics and building the future. Our children, I'm a mother of 2 young children. My oldest, Amber, she's 6, she's in year 2. She deserves to go to a classroom where she can focus on the learning. She needs the right materials to focus on the 1 hour of maths, 1 hour of reading, 1 hour of English and literacy and writing every day. And as a mother of 2 young children who I benefited from the public education system in New Zealand, this is the minimum I expected from New Zealand's education system. And this is finally what I see in our New Zealand primary schools because of the education reform that Minister Stanford have delivered for New Zealand. And as a mother and as a parent, we are so proud to see the progress of this government that we have delivered in fixing the basics and delivering and building the future for our children, for our younger generation, but also for the future of New Zealand. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have written so much of my thoughts based on the Prime Minister's statement to Parliament. But the blessing and the opening of the primary school in Flatbush on Monday morning at 5 a.m. was dream come true for me. As a New Zealander, I'm so proud of this government that we are fixing the basics and delivering for our future.
Camilla Bellis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Always an honour to be able to take a call in this House, and am very happy to be able to rise in support of the Leader of the Opposition's amendments to the Prime Minister's statement. Mr. Speaker, it was quite interesting listening to the speeches from the other side today, and I was kind of a little bit perplexed as to exactly what I should be taking away from that. We heard from, we saw that James Meagher could adequately read a speech. That's what I took away from his particular contribution. We heard that Tim van der Molen's favourite electorate is the one that he represents. And we heard a great description from Nancy Liu as actually what constitutes a classroom and the fact that it needs walls and a roof. So I don't know really what to take from this government. They seem to have so little enthusiasm for what was in their Prime Minister's statement. Prime Minister couldn't even complete his time. And I just want to say to the government MPs, can we please wake up and start addressing the issues which are really important to New Zealanders? We have so many problems in this country, and these have been brought about by the fact that since this government has come in, they have made things not better like they promised, but worse for New Zealanders. We see 32,000 fewer jobs since this government came in. That represents less opportunity for everyone who lives here, their children, their grandchildren. We're seeing more people than ever going across to Australia. We have 165,000 people in New Zealand out of work and looking for a job, and that is not even taking into account the underutilisation rate in New Zealand. 139,000 people need more work. They're working part-time and they want to work more. They want to contribute. Where is the opportunity that this government is presenting for these New Zealanders? We didn't hear about it from the Prime Minister, and we certainly haven't heard about it from the members of the government that have been speaking today. Now, I am the public service spokesperson for the Labour Party, and I want to acknowledge how terrible these government's changes have been for public servants, not only in Wellington, but in fact all over the country, many of whom are constituents of the MPs that sit around this House. We have had thousands and thousands of public servants lose their job under this government. And we know that Wellington is the capital. They've got a lot of public servants here, although I'm not 100% sure if it's more than in Auckland. We know that they have had 10,000 fewer jobs in Wellington. And look at what has happened to this capital city. And we can see that this is a direct result of the choices that this government is making not to invest in jobs and to actually make economic conditions worse. So I ask again for those opposite, please wake up and tell us how you're going to address these really important issues that are facing New Zealand. Now, Madam Speaker, this has been a very full-on start to the year for New Zealand. Unfortunately, and I do want to tone the political aspect of my speak down a little bit, because one of my other portfolios is being emergency management spokesperson, and it's really important to acknowledge how impactful the weather events were in the North Island at the beginning of this year. My colleague Kushla Taingiere Emmanuel will speak to that a little bit more, because she's been on the ground on the East Coast helping the locals there. And I have seen people from all over this House. James Meagher asked us to be colourblind, and certainly in emergency situations we take off our party coats and we put on our hats as legislators for the country and actually try and make the best out of what can be a really tragic decision. So I want to acknowledge the people who have been caught up in that. I want to acknowledge the communities. I want to especially acknowledge those who have been impacted and have lost loved ones. It is an absolute tragedy to ever lose a loved one in an accident, and when this is an extreme weather event, it really is something that I just cannot imagine the pain that some of these families are going through. So I want to acknowledge those that were lost in Mount Maunganui, especially in Welcome Bay and in Warkworth. Those people are still in our thoughts, and while we continue to work hard in this House, we will continue to look for ways to better work together in order to address those events that we know will continue to happen, focus on adaptation and on making sure New Zealand has the best emergency response system in the world. We face the most challenges. We should have the best response system. As Chair of the Governance and Administration Committee, I really take that responsibility seriously with the new Emergency Management Bill to look at these changes. So, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, there is a lot of work to do in New Zealand. Some challenges are created by this government, which I've addressed. Some challenges we face as a result of our geography, but we need to make sure we do more.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Commissioner Tangari Manuel.
Tēnā koe e te māngau o te whare. O te rā, ko taku kauhau tuatahi tēnei mō tēnei tau, nā reira huri noa i tēnei whare, tēnā rā atu tātou katoa. E tū ana wau e te māngai o te whare ki te tuku kauhau mō te kōrero a te Premier i tēnei tau. Madam Chair, I stand to provide the government an opportunity to make good on their promises. On January the 22nd to the 21st to 22nd, the northern end of Ikaroa Rāwhiti, from Pōtaka to Wharekāhika to Te Araroa to Mātahi Horoira, received a month's worth of rain in 36 hours. The news coverage showed the devastation, but being on the ground as the local MP was not only an honour to be able to be present to fulfil my responsibility as their advocate here at Parliament, but it was also very moving, Madam Chair, to see the devastation, to see roads that were no longer, children's playgrounds devastated, recently built, school gyms and facilities, community facilities damaged, newly built, farms and homes destructed. It was also the best show, as my colleague has acknowledged, of community will and pulling together. Like I said, Madam Chair, what this absolutely presents is an opportunity for the government to come true, particularly on their promise for fixing the basics and building the future, upgrading roads, schools, hospitals and infrastructure. Let's see it. You've got a very concrete opportunity to deliver and reconnect Wharekāhika, Te Araroa, Pōtaka to the rest of Aotearoa. I do want to acknowledge the Prime Minister and other ministers and MP for East Coast who did visit. So you have seen firsthand the devastation. Stop talking just about roads of national significance and honour the people of Ikaroa Rāwhiti and reconnect them so that they can go back to business as usual. They can go back to school. They can access hospitals because right now they're living in a real danger zone. The other promise talks about growing the economy to create jobs and opportunities. It's no secret that areas like Wharekāhika and Te Araroa have high unemployment stats, and the median income is between 27,000 to about 27,000, much lower than the national median of 41,500. However, one key industry on the coast that creates employment and has an impact on the economy is, of course, farming and various other methods of working our land. 30,000 hectares of whenua, predominantly whenua Māori, have been ravaged by this. Again, an opportunity for the Prime Minister to make good on his promises, go back to Whare Kahika, go back to Te Araroa and tell the people what you're going to do for them, acknowledging the small contribution, of course, that has already been made. On that note, Madam Speaker, of course, the whānau at home are not resting on their laurels. Like I said, I was so proud to be from home. See all the volunteers supported by the professional services from around Aotearoa. Right now, as we speak, the 30,000 hectares of land I've talked about that have been ravaged, the communities who have been isolated from each other and their homes are being looked after by locals with support, as I've said, from services. But they need more. They need some concrete guarantees from this government that they will be reconnected. Before all this, Madam Chair, people were already saying they felt overlooked by this government. This is your chance to prove, to put your money where your mouth is and say, we see you, we value you, and we will reconnect you. Hoia nora, I want to acknowledge all the whānau around the world who have sent your aroha, your koha, and your karakia to the whānau of home. Hoia nora koutou katoa kei te wā kāinga, ka kaha tonu koutou, ma te atua koutou katoa e manaaki e tiaki. Tēnā tātou.
Madam Speaker.
Joseph Mooney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise as the Member of Parliament for Southland to speak in support of the Prime Minister's statement. Madam Speaker, 2 years ago this government was elected on an ambitious agenda to get New Zealand back on track, and since then has been relentlessly focused on fixing the basics and building the future, Madam Speaker. And we have fixed the basics. We have got inflation under control. We have been reducing regulation on businesses, small and large, so that they can focus on building their businesses, on creating employment opportunities for New Zealanders. And that is exactly what is happening, Madam Speaker. This year, the primary sector is on track to reach a record $62 billion in exports. We have already reached a record of $80 billion of total exports, Madam Speaker. And in my electorate of Southland, which I will say is the greatest electorate in the country, and I know everyone in this parliament has their own favourite, Madam Speaker, but there are very sound reasons for me to say that. 15% of tradable exports come from Southland, Madam Speaker. It creates a huge contribution to New Zealand's economy and to helping our country get back on track. And in fact, this week, Madam Speaker, the Waimumu Field Days, the Southern Field Days will be at Waimumu, and that is the greatest field days in the South Island. It only happens every 2 years, and I think it's going to be a very positive one for everyone. Madam Speaker, I want to give a shout out to everyone who has been working hard across our primary sector, across our orchards, across our farms, across vegetable growers who have been working incredibly hard to work through a very challenging time and get this economy back on track, which they have done. And we're seeing great prices in meats, we're seeing great prices in the dairy sector, and that is helping people pay down debt that they accumulated over the last few years prior to that, Madam Speaker, and now put them in a position where they can invest in other things which will flow through the broader economy. And that also helps the government, Madam Speaker. That helps us with a tax cake and allows us to invest in things like the new Dunedin Hospital, Madam Speaker. This government has got that back on track, Madam Speaker. It had blown out, got that back on track. It is now underway, Madam Speaker. And I do want to take this opportunity also to just acknowledge the late Jules Radich, who was the Mayor of Dunedin, who worked very hard on this, and I worked with him, Madam Speaker, to help our government get this in a position so we could get this across the line. It's very, my heart goes out to his family. And I would also take that opportunity to, unfortunately we had a sad start to the year with also Sir Tim Chabot, the long-time Mayor of Invercargill, who also passed away at the beginning of this year, but made a huge contribution to Southland. And something he's well remembered for is how he helped with the Southern Institute of Technology. And I was privileged to be at the opening or the welcoming ceremony yesterday with the Honourable Penny Simmons, the local Member of Parliament. And it's great to see all of the new faces coming in, all of the community there to support, and the acknowledgement to Sir Tim Chabot. Also yesterday, Madam Speaker, we had the opening of a new dialysis unit at Invercargill at the Southland Hospital. And I want to acknowledge the Honourable Simeon Brown, the Health Minister, who has been doing an incredible job in very challenging circumstances in getting things like this underway. Almost a third of people who go to Dunedin for dialysis treatment come from Southland. This means this new unit in Southland Hospital, Madam Speaker, will make a massive difference to people who no longer have to travel up to 3 times a week, 2.5 hours each way, and often having to stay in Dunedin and spend time away from their families. So it's investments like these, Madam Speaker, that we are making to build the future for our region and for the country. Madam Speaker, if I turn to Queenstown, another part of my region and the Central Otago area, we have been doing it is an incredible area, and we have been doing some really great work. We have a process underway for a regional deal that is negotiations underway, Madam Speaker, between the 3 councils who have responsibilities in that area and the government. And this gives us an opportunity to work on the long-term solutions this region needs. It's one of the fastest growing areas in the country, with a lot of demand on its infrastructure, which is growing fast. And we have some very exciting things like, for example, an application in Fast Track for a gondola, which would be the first in the Southern Hemisphere for passenger movements. So we've got some really exciting things happening there. And we also have a clinical services plan, which is the first one that's been done for a region in decades. I did a huge amount of work to get that going, Madam Speaker. Health New Zealand has now delivered that to the Minister, and I understand there will be recommendations that will be taken to Cabinet soon, and I look forward to those. If I turn to Fiordland, Madam Speaker, we have some very exciting things there with a long-term concession for the operation of key visitor infrastructure announced by the Conservation Minister, Tama Potaka, beginning this month, and continuing investment in that region. So there's a lot happening, Madam Speaker. This is a government that is getting the future happening.
Madam Speaker,
Dr. Carlos Chong.
I rise in strong support of Prime Minister's statement. Over the past 2 years, this government has been working tirelessly to bring New Zealand back on track. The challenges we face were real: economic pressure, rising living costs, community safety, and declining confidence in public service. But through hard work, discipline, and a clear plan, New Zealand is now on track for recovery. Just a few minutes ago, we actually received a survey result shows satisfaction with government service experience reached a record 84% in December 2025 quarter. That recovery is not an abstract. It has been felt in communities like Mount Wasco. Madam Speaker, let me turn to economy and tourism, because together they show how this recovery is being delivered in a practical way. With interest rates now coming down, many families are feeling real relief through lower weekly mortgage repayment. That makes a real difference at the kitchen table. Business confidence is high as well. Small businesses are beginning to plan, invest, and hire again. Tourism and major events are key parts of the economic momentum. Through this government major events and tourism package, and our work to boost Eden Park status as a premium major event venue, we are driving jobs, growth, and investment right here in Auckland. I have seen the impact firsthand. I recently spoke with the manager of my local Soho hotel, who told me that whenever there is a major event in Auckland, especially at Eden Park, their hotel is fully booked. That means more shift for staff, more customer for nearby cafe and restaurant, and more money flowing through our local economies. Major events do not just fill stadiums. They fill hotel, taxi, restaurant, and shops. They support workers, strengthen small businesses, and showcase New Zealand to the world. And this momentum is continuing. Just this morning, Minister Louise Upston announced further government investment into major sport, food, and cultural events. This investment will drive economic growth, attract visitors, and encourage further private investment. Second, I want to focus on education as well, because this is something people in Mount Wasco actually really care. Education is one of the clearest examples of this government fixing the basic and building the future. Right. We are reforming NCEA to ensure it is clear, credible, and focused on achievement. We are getting rid of cell phone. We are making sure students receive 1 hour of reading, writing, and mathematics every day, because these core skills are essential for success. Parents in Mount Roskill are telling me that they have more confidence in our education system and believe this is the right approach to help their children succeed. This government is listening to parents, supporting teachers, and building a system that prepares our young people not just for exam, but for life. Also, we talk about law and order. This government has been very clear. We are tough on crime, enforcing tougher sentencing law to restore law and order. And the approach is working. When people commit crimes, there must be consequence. I've been door knocking across Mount Roskill and listened to residents. And one message comes through very clear. People actually are feeling safer. Under the previous government, New Zealanders were repeatedly confronted with headlines about rain raid and gang activities. But today, those stories are far less frequent. And that is no accident, because this government have put more police on beat, targeting gangs, and established a tactical retail crime unit at Mount Roskill Police Station to focus on retail crime. These measures are making a real difference. There are 38,000 fewer victims of crime compared to recent years. They are protecting local businesses, supporting victims, and restoring confidence in our communities. We understand there is more to do, but this government is here, taking responsibility, fixing the basic, and building the future.
Well done.
Taku te Ferris.
Tēnā kua rongo au te ki taurangi a te Premier. E mihi tonu ana ki te parakura ki runga o Mauao, rātau i waro i roto i te āwha nui, me te hōrapa o te āwha ki runga ki te tini me te mano. E mihi ana. As I listened to the Prime Minister address the nation following the catastrophic floods from the east coast to the far north, his praise for our marae, our hapu and our iwi communities could only be received as hollow words and shallow praise, particularly when we take into account the actions of his government over the past 2 years. Then I think of all the marae, the hapu, the iwi communities across Te Taitonga, throughout Te Waipounamu that have carried out that same work for the last decade or more as these events intensify. From Te Awhina and Whakatū during the Nelson floods to Ōmaka and Takahanga during the Kaikoura earthquakes, they were the lifelines of their communities. Te Tuahiwi and Ngā Haue Whā, Nō Tautahi, all the way down to Murihiku. Our marae, our hapu, our iwi have always done this work. And whilst I acknowledge the $1 million fund, I agree it's obviously insufficient, but at least it's a start. And I hope the Prime Minister carries his newfound appreciation for te iwi Māori into the rest of the election year. Then we had Waitangi, and rather than take the opportunity to set out his strong commitment to te iwi Māori, another pre-prepared speech again felt like hollow words and shallow praise. And rather than step up to the challenge and hope of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, he managed to reduce it to something akin to socialism. And that he's not really into that, when the promise of Te Tiriti o Waitangi is ora. It's well-being for everybody. We're tired of politicians showing up and reading speeches to us. We want to hear from you. We want to know what your commitment to Te Tiriti, to te iwi Māori is. We want to know you understand the issues impacting Māori the most. We expect more. We expect more. We expect leadership that upholds Te Tiriti o Waitangi as the foundation of our country. We expect more, and more importantly, our rangatahi expect more. Our rangatahi are the future of the country. I've spoken about this many times in this house. They're the future of the labour workforce and can't be ignored. They'll no longer tolerate being pushed to the back. They want to know what's on offer for them. And at this very moment, they are mobilising to take control of their own political futures. So as we head into this election year, te iwi Māori, e te iwi Māori. Now, we need to be clear. There's only one critical task that needs to be done this year, and that's a change of government. And the key thing for us to remember, e te whānau, is that we have the numbers to do it. And through all the current political noise, it remains clear that party politics continues to fail Māori. The political model that promotes the idea that there can only be one leader, one president, one chair, one set of ideas has never delivered the change that we need the most. Our representation is driven from the ground up, not the top down. Our leadership invites sharing of power and acknowledgement of mana, not the hoarding of power and diminishing of mana. Our leadership is for the people, by the people, not for the people, by individuals. And if the two recent polls are even remotely accurate, then the independent Māori seats will play a critical role in determining who the next government will be. So the message is clear at Te Iwi. The independent Māori seats continue to be our greatest political leverage and opportunity. We must retain them. Stay on the Māori roll. Every 35,000 Māori that get onto the Māori roll trigger a new independent Māori seat. We must continue. We could have 16 independent Māori seats. We must maximise the Māori vote this year for a change of government. We cannot afford any wasted Māori votes. And to all of our wahine, our mama, our aunties, our nannies, our sisters, our cousins, we're going to need you this year. We're going to need you to make sure that each of your whānau are organised ahead of time, that they are on the Māori roll before August, that they are confirmed, enrolled to vote before October, and that when early voting opens on the 26th of October, we vote early and we vote as whānau. Nō reira kia kaha rā e te iwi Māori roto i tēnei tau. Kia māia, kia mana wanui, kei a tātou te mana hei kōwhiri i te kāwana haere ake nei. Nō reira kia toitū te iwi Māori, kia toitū anō hoki ko te tiriti o Waitangi e te pika tēnā koe, tēnā rā tātou.
This is a split call. Huhana Linden.
Madam Speaker, we've heard proclamations of success and shout-outs for the fast track being some remedy that needed fixing in Aotearoa. But may I share Tihei Taranaki? Tihei Taranaki iwi, ngā rauru, ngā tirua nui. The way that Southern Taranaki tribes like Ngā Ruahine and community came together over 13 years of battling to protect the seabed in Southern Taranaki, we have now seen success again. They have fought for years to say no as iwi and community to seabed mining off Taranaki. So Tihei Taranaki. And what were the things that were important in this space for this decision from the fast track panel was Te Tiriti o Waitangi and upholding the obligations that Te Tiriti o Waitangi affords the iwi. But further, the degradation and undermining and the lack of protections for these sacred taonga species. So toi tū te taiao, toi tū te tiriti. And this fast track myth that we have still remains within us in Tai Tokerau. And I cast my eyes again to the north and reflect on McCullum Brothers, who, after 80 years of taking sand out of my own people in Pākere, Ngāti Manuhere, now are coming north to add further destruction to the taiao in Aotearoa. And their consent has now been lodged. The super fast track that has now been inflicted on communities will shorten the runway for iwi Māori and councils to respond. The super fast track is going to make it even harder for community voice to be heard. But no, community and iwi Māori are united, as we saw in Taranaki. So yes, come to Bream Bay. Give it a go, McCullum Brothers. Any of you from the government, try and come into Aotearoa and keri I te onepu ki te ako. Good luck. Expect resistance. Because people and community continue to rally in the kāhore. People and community will gather on the 15th of March and protest again against what this House is going to inflict upon the onepu, upon the people, the community, the iwi Māori of Bream Bay, because there is no gain in sand mining in Bream Bay. There is no evidence that there is any need for this in Tai Tokerau or even for Aotearoa. There are new solutions for manufactured sand. It is a manufactured narrative that somehow the sand mining in Bream Bay is going to be of regional and national significance. He teka marika. So bring it into our community and try your luck, because hapu and community are united in the kāhore on this issue, just as Taranaki Maunga has been united, as we have seen, and finally the panel has agreed and declined it. So, this consent being lodged, people are rallying, community are working together, and as the Green Party, we stand alongside community and iwi Māori to uphold the obligations of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and to protect Te Taiao. And I don't know whether you've seen the comms, but the Green Party is deeply committed to revoking coal, hard rock, seabed mining, of any of these fast-track consents that might come across our tepu, because you know what? We honour Te Tiriti and we honour the importance of Te Taiao protections. This fast-track is no good for Te Taiao, tātou mā. Be clear on that. Our communities are watching, our mokopuna are watching, because what is decided in this House and what is implemented through the fast-track will have intergenerational impacts. And that will be the shame that we will have to bear as a House as we see projects like the McCullum Brothers come into community, come into iwi Māori without consent. There is no tautoko from our community, and I dare anybody to come into Arohe and try and take us on as we oppose McCullum Brothers and sand mining in Bream Bay. Kia ora.
Madam Speaker,
Stuart Smith.
I move that this debate be now adjourned.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. This debate is adjourned and is set down for resumption next sitting day. I call on Government Order of the Day, number 1.
Interrupted debate on the second reading of the Employment Relations Amendment Bill.
We were up to the Employment Relations Amendment Bill, call number 8, which was
Madam
a Labour
Speaker.
Party call. The Honourable Jan Tinetti.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Here we are again, another week and another government bill that's putting a wrecking ball to the rights of workers in this country. They call it modernisation and they call it efficiency, but Madam Speaker, let's call it what it really is. This is regression, a full-scale rollback of the fairness in the workplace. This bill is an absolute disgrace. It is an outright ideological attack on the rights of working New Zealanders, on the dignity of work and on the very values that keep our communities strong in this country. This Employment Relations Amendment Bill doesn't amend the law, it amputates it. Now, I was fortunate enough, Madam Speaker, even though it is not my select committee, to sit on the Education and Workforce Select Committee for the hearings for this bill. And we heard from everyday New Zealanders. We heard from workers, we heard from small business owners, we heard from unions, thousands of them. We didn't hear thousands of them, but thousands made submissions. 3,590 submissions. And how many supported the bill? 1%. 4% didn't have a view either way. So that's 95%, Madam Speaker, who said loud and clear that this bill makes our lives harder. And what did this government do about the fact that 95% spoke against this bill? Very little. They ignored those people. They came back with token changes, tiny tweaks to make it look like they cared. But in fact, Madam Speaker, they made it worse. It came back from Select Committee in an appalling state. It was bad enough when it went to Select Committee and it came back even worse. They lifted the personal grievance level, but the worst thing they did, Madam Speaker, was that they fiddled with the wording around the so-called gateway test.